Welcome to the continuation of our podcast series. I'm Mike Kruse, and we've been doing a series of podcasts regarding how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected our Ontario criminal court system. And today we're going to talk about domestic assaults. We're going to talk about how COVID is affecting domestic assaults and how they're moving through the system as a result of the pandemic, and how the courts are adapting and Crown attorneys are adapting. And I'm here today with our Kruse Law firm office manager, who's doing a great job running our offices across the provinces. And welcome to the podcast again, Jody.
Hello, Mike. Thank you so much for that. Yes, this is a great topic we're going to be speaking of today. Lots of, unfortunately, domestic assaults happening across the province and the world, of course, even more so during now the times of COVID-19 pandemic. People are frustrated. Anger is developing. People are laid off, not working. So lots of anger issues going on in households, especially many that are working together. So great topic to talk about. Many people are facing these charges of domestic assault right now, more so than I've ever seen during the pandemic. So Mike, that said, how, when someone is charged with domestic assault, are the Crowns viewing these cases, and are we getting any better results in trying to cure the backlog of cases through the system and get couples back together that want to get back together? Some don't, of course. But can you answer that for us, Mike? And how are domestic assault charges being handled right now versus, even at the beginning of the pandemic? And are better deals to be had? And are the Crowns giving more consideration, feeling sorry maybe for the couples and trying to, rather than keep them apart, get them back together with giving us better deals?
Great question, Jody. As you point out, unfortunately, domestic assaults have risen across the province for multiple reasons, I suppose.
Exactly.
Anecdotally, people are laid off. There's a lot of people are together 24/7. They're not used to that. There's a lot of stressors.
People want to punch each other out during these times.
Unfortunately, and it's a sad reality that's going on. And our firm does a lot of this. So we've had a great uptick, unfortunately, for domestic assaults. So domestic assault, first of all, just for the viewers who don't know, I guess it's self-explanatory, but if you're in a relationship with someone living together, or even not living together but dating, and there's assaultive behavior from one to the other, that's defined as a domestic assault. It can also include other forms of violence like death threats and even harassment, I suppose, could fall under the rubric of a domestic assault. And the Crown attorneys normally have very clear directives about how to deal with these. They have to be strictly followed. What's been going on with the pandemic then? Well, what happened this summer, and as people are aware, the courts paused from about mid-March to July 6th. There was no trials going on.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yes, and domestic assaults during that period of time, they weren't, really being considered urgent cases, in the sense that they weren't really accepting guilty pleas on it. Everything was getting put over. But the Crown attorneys realized, hey, look, the courts are paused. We didn't open these courts until July 6th, and in a limited way. So all of these cases that were set for trial in the summer, they went over. Now we've got a cascading potential delay problem, which could be disastrous. Cases could get thrown out. So the Crowns, to a certain extent, have used their discretion to loosen up their sentencing practice slightly, not tremendously. They're not selling the farm, so to speak. But, let me give you some examples. So in some domestic assault cases before COVID, we were able to get a conditional discharge. In other words, avoiding a criminal record, which is a great result for the people that don't want to go to trial.
Absolutely, that's a great result.
Yeah, but now what we're finding is the range is widening. So in other words, if someone had some significant bruising before and the Crown's not giving a initial assault, they might be more apt to do that now. So we're getting some better deals.
Even if it's a little bit more of a invasive assault, like assault, as you mentioned, can be. You can spit at someone, that's considered assault. That you can shove someone, that's an assault. So if someone actually slapped someone upside the head and left a mark, even now during COVID, whereas before COVID, they would consider that a more serious form of assault because there was a slight mark or injury due to that assault. But now they're going, not that bad.
Right, and not to minimize any injury, or no matter how minor or trifling, but the deals have widened to a certain extent without giving away the farm, as I mentioned, and we're avoiding records for many people who otherwise might not have been. Now, every county's different, every crown's different, so some, like even the most conservative crowns who weren't apt to provide a deal before are more apt to do that. Because let's face it, do we want cases thrown out in the future because of delay? And do we want cases such as murder and sexual assault thrown out because domestic assaults are taking up court time, just as an example?
So, Mike, if someone's charged with, say you have a husband-wife and the husband has been charged with assault and, they have some kids at home and he's the breadwinner of the family. They do want to get back together. The wife never really meant him to be charged. She just called the police to actually, scare him or get him to shape up in that moment. Cops come, they charge him, whatever. So they do want to get back together. What kind of, and right now he has conditions not to go back home, not to communicate with her, nor his kids, only through, third-party access. So what kind of result could we, right now during COVID, without any injuries to the person, could we potentially strive to get that you think and your thoughts would be agreeable to the Crown at this stage?
Yeah, very fair question, Jody. So what happens in a certain percentage of domestic assaults, as you point out, it might be a first-time assault. The wife's mad, quite properly, she got slapped and she phoned the police. But ultimately, she wants to get back together, he wants to get back together. In this situation, we often get our client into counseling, number one, first and foremost, to show the
Now, Mike,
Crown.
is that something we tell the client to do before we even get a Crown's position? Like, is it advantageous for a Crown? Because that's a great situation where I get a lot of questions where people that are charged with that offense and they go, okay, well, I'm prepared to go to counseling right away. And we haven't even made their first court appearance. And I'm like, whoa, like, let's just, I said, honestly, everyone can benefit from some sort of counseling. I mean, if I didn't have to work, I'd be in counseling every day.
I feel during COVID, I need some degree of anger management counseling as well.
But I guess I'm just asking for those potential clients that reach out to us, like, is it something, I always say to them, if it's something that you feel you can benefit from by doing ahead of time before we even know if in fact the Crown is going to have that as a requirement to resolve your case and give us a decent deal, because I'm sure people have better things to do than start the counseling without the Crown even saying they have to.
Well, a good question. And I guess I start out by asking a client, if for clients who are maintaining they're absolutely innocent, I'm not necessarily recommending counseling unless they feel they need it for the situation.
Okay.
But on other situations where we know the client wants to plead guilty and resolve and get back home, it's often advisable for us to say, look, counseling could be of assistance. Maybe we can get ahead of the game, get proactive on it. It can help you. Aside from, getting a deal, so to speak, what do we part of criminal lawyer's job, in my view, is to help people. And counseling can help. People think that, criminal lawyers are all about just getting people off. It's also about trying to get proper counseling. Most cases are resolved. Like, there's only 5 to 10% of matters ever go to trial in Canada, including domestic assaults.
Well, and let's face it, Mike, during COVID especially, the stresses of life, cause us all to throw a few extra drinks back, to therefore getting in a few more arguments and heated situations. So, yes, Kruse Law is here to help those people to try to find the better way to deal with the situation and their charge at the same time. So, that's really great thing that, you have that mindset to also help these clients through the time of not just their charge, but like the overview of their family situation.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's considered part of our job to try and get families back together.
I agree.
Now, interestingly, a couple of other issues on this. So, on a lot of domestics before COVID, if there was some significant injury, the Crown's adamant about a jail term. not on real serious injuries, but on something that's right on the line where the Crown can go either way, they're more apt now to, agree to a joint submission for no jail, again, to avoid delay and to avoid getting people, we don't want to be sending people into custody right now with
No,
a pandemic.
definitely not. Not during COVID. There's so much going on, so many outbreaks. I think actually one of our provincial jails, I'm not sure, it might have been a situation here in the Windsor area, where there was a little, at the beginning of COVID, I do think that, I think a jail guard or something had COVID. So we want to prohibit people from, we don't want to see any of our clients go to jail ever, of course, but we want to try to protect anyone we can and try to avoid those situations at all costs.
Yes. And one of the final things on this issue is, in the past, it was very difficult to secure a peace bond on a domestic assault. And it still is, even during COVID. But we've been finding even on more minor type assaults, surprisingly, the Crowns have agreed to a peace bond with a revocable consent so that the person can go home if the wife or husband wants. So even that's happening on much more minor matters.
Is that something you would recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that avoids a criminal record.
Right.
It's an order from the court to keep the peace and be of good behavior and not get in trouble, essentially. And at least it's something in place for the wife or husband who is the victim. It puts something in place where they can have the person charged again and they have some controls over them, so to speak.
But my thought on that is, and I've often told some male clients, let's say, for example, they're like, yeah, like they've come to us already after they have disclosure and the Crown has offered to them a peace bond. And of course, for like a 12-month probationary period with that and certain conditions and counseling or whatever. My thought is, depending on what the situation was when the assault or the situation happened, I mean, sometimes we all know, myself included, women can get a little nutty. And
I don't want to say, Jody.
what if in this situation, so I say to the potential client, that is asking this question, like, should I take this? And I said, depends on if you actually want to get back in the home, you have a loving relationship that just had this one mishap. But if you have a situation where the wife goes off the rails every, other week, and then entering the peace bond, you're going to have to keep good behavior and peace and whatever and not get into trouble again. So you're then walking around on eggshells every minute, being on your best absolute behavior because the wife knows that all it takes is one call to get you back into custody.
Yes, absolutely. And this is what I have to say on that. But first of all, I neither confirm nor deny that women can be nutty. Men can be very nutty too. We represent both men and women on domestic assaults, and relationships are fraught with difficulties, creating stress and unfortunately violence.
Yeah.
So absolutely. I say to a client in that situation, look, if a client is adamantly maintaining their innocence to us, you have to be very careful about entering into a peace bond because if they're truly innocent, that victim has laid a false complaint of assault. And now that a peace bond's in place, there's an order that that person can't contact them. Let's say it's a relationship breakup. They're not getting back together.
Yeah.
Now that woman or man can just pick up the phone and say to the police, he showed up at my doorstep, or the person's charged. So you have to be very careful, and you raise a very good point. It's a delicate approach in balancing. But in many situations, we realize that the man or woman who made the complaint, they're being truthful. They're not doing that. But yes, there are situations where there's vindictive people who continually get people charged who are on a peace bond.
So I guess what we're saying is that, for our clients and for people that reach out to us charged with domestic assault, that we really want them to be mindful of all the ins and outs of when they accept an offer or a resolution that we have negotiated on their behalf, and I think, there's many too, I think, that are just so distraught by the whole situation and in the mindset that they don't necessarily want to go back, but they don't necessarily want to continue on without them or on this avenue of even setting the matter for trial and waiting so long to have a trial, especially during COVID, with those same conditions in place. So they want to just wrap up and crush these conditions, certain of them, and at least get back at their home.
Yes, for sure. And, absolutely, you're correct. And domestic assault, right now, it's fraught with difficulty. The province, where our firm and all the other firms in the justice system is dealing with it. But the message that I will give our viewers, it's a great time to hire a criminal lawyer right now, because if
Definitely, because they want to get, the Crown Attorney's Office wants to get those cases off their shelves, and just focus then on, obviously the more serious ones. I'm not diminishing the fact that assault is, not a serious charge, but as opposed to, assault causing bodily harm or, aggravated assault or things where there's like huge injuries and, people's required surgeries and things like that. So yeah, Mike, you're right that Crowns are open to, some very good negotiations by very good defense. You certainly don't want to go to them with some menial knowledge in this regard. You want to be prepared whenever you negotiate with the Crown.
Yes, for sure. This has been a very interesting topic today, Jody, and I encourage our listeners to continue watching the rest of our podcast series. But if you're charged with a domestic assault right now in the province, it's a great time to hire a good criminal lawyer.
Yes, give us a call, Kruse Law.
Everyone stay safe, and we look forward to joining you at our next podcast. I really hope you enjoyed our podcast. We are absolutely committed to bringing you informative and interesting criminal and DUI content. If you're watching this on YouTube, I ask and encourage you to like this video and subscribe to our channel. If you happen to be an audio listener, please follow us and stay tuned for more great content. If you've been charged with a criminal offense or a DUI in Ontario, please call us or reach out to us online with the contact form found at kruselaw.ca.